Welcome, everyone. This is episode 27 of the Brandon Adams podcast. I have with me Tom Dwan.
How were the first 26? I've never seen one of them. I need to go watch them.
The first 26 were a lot of fun. I was steady on the one every 10-day kind of schedule, and then I dropped off. This is my first one in 3 months.
Are there some that stand out that were real good or something?
I think some of the poker guys were the best ones. I mean, I explicitly did not want it to be a poker podcast, so I tried to have no poker. I have had Jason Strasser a couple times because he has a fascinating history, obviously.
Is he still doing the same thing?
Yeah, he's killing it. He's killing it. He's a great guy. I had the privilege of going to his office one time in Oklahoma City and seeing his day to day. His episodes were very well received because people love that like poker to life transition, especially if someone's killing it. And I've always brought him on during times of market turmoil. And he loves to like make fun of all his poker player friends and all of their random market bets and all this dumb stuff that they do. So yeah, we usually talk markets, talk his history, the transition from poker to finance, and he's been a regular. So his were very popular. Sauce was very popular. James Blake, tennis, very popular. The most popular episode that I ever did was my Twitter friend Barton Wang. His parents lived in Wuhan, and he's a very, very smart dude. He researched coronavirus early on, and we did a coronavirus podcast the first week in March. And that one had like, I don't know, 25,000, 30,000 hits. That was my biggest one. But I'm optimistic that even though I haven't dropped a pod in 3 months, this one is going to be solidly second place to Barton. My viewers and listeners might not know that in the poker world, there are a couple of people that probably have greater recognition than Tom. I would say that Phil Hellmuth and Daniel Negreanu are more likely to be picked out by the random person in the street. But in terms of moving the needle for something like a podcast or a poker TV show, Tom is not even in the same category as stars like Hellmuth. Tom will move the needle 5x relative to Phil, bless him, or anyone else. It's true. I mean, I happen to know the metrics. Yeah, I happen to know the metrics, and there are two names that move the needle much more so than any like NBA star who might go on set, or the most recognizable faces, which I would imagine are Daniel and Phil. There are two names that move the needle in terms of the metrics. You're one of them, and I'm sure you can guess the other one.
I would guess Ivy, right?
Ivy, yeah. So High Stakes Poker is dropping this week, and I believe Ivy played like all of the sessions but one, and you played every single session?
I think Ivy only played like 3 days, right, or something. I don't remember exactly. But no, I think he took a day or two off. Yeah.
And you played every session, right?
I think I played every day. Yeah. Did I show late one time or something? No, I think I played every day. Yeah.
We won't talk about how it went down because I don't want to do spoilers, even though this is probably going to release like midway into it. It was a not terrible experience. That's the summary.
You know, filming High Stakes Poker that hadn't been filmed in 6 or 7 years. I don't know exactly how long, but something like that. And filming it during COVID. You know, I think it turned out a bunch better than I would have guessed. So, you know, they're like, the filming went off pretty well. Their testing stuff they had set up worked out pretty well. A bunch of people showed up to play. I think it worked out pretty well. So
And the results were not awful. That's our spoiler. The results, your personal experience.
Oh, I won a few pennies.
Push. No spoilers.
Oh, I don't know what. I thought that's what you were hinting at.
Well, yeah, but we can't. I'm saying that it was good. It was favorable.
That's all right.
There's one hand we have to talk about as a spoiler, because this was the most interesting hand as the observer. I play in Miami at the Hard Rock every once in a while, and Laz plays there. You probably never played with Laz. He's an awesome guy. Miami Laz.
I played with him on High Stakes Poker, but I hadn't.
And I've never seen him as frustrated as he was after that hand that you played against him. So I'm gonna go over the hand, and I'm gonna explain what I think happened. Okay, I'm gonna go over what I think happened, and then you're gonna have to explain what was going through your mind. Okay? I think that you in high stakes poker, there's a desire to mix it up that leads you to play far differently than you play normally, because I've seen you play normally so many times. You like to get involved pre-flop because it's fun, and so it leads you to play differently, and then post-flop you play roughly similar to how you play. So here's the hand. The hand is Helmuth opens. Laz, who has been playing pretty snug, unusually snug in this game, he 3-bets.
Oh, he 3-bet real small, right?
I thought he 3-bet somewhat normally. So here is my commentary. My commentary is that at the time, Phil was talking a lot, and you cold called with Jack 5 suited from the big blind, and my read on the situation was that you wanted to bluff Phil. My read was that you so desired to bluff Phil that all other poker was out the window.
No. It was just cheap, man. So okay. The first high stakes poker that I played, those first few times I played, I think my no limit game was just quite a bit sharper than most of the people's.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the gap was pretty big. So I was able to get away with playing a bunch of hands. Plus it was fun. And obviously, like, it was my first time playing on TV. I was trying to play a few more hands, and everything worked out. Meaning when I was bluffing, it would work out. When I had it, people would pay me off. I just ran really good. Obviously now a lot of people's no limit games are sharper. I haven't even played much no limit lately, so my no limit game is not super sharp. But these are pretty deep stacked games, and sometimes people use goofy sizes. So Phil, I think, was min raising or close to min raising, and Laz did re-raise pretty small. And I don't know, I'm not saying it's winning, but if it's losing, it's got to be small. Like, it's fine to get in there and mix it up, because it was something like, I think we're playing 4-8, and maybe it goes like 1,600, 7,000, and there was a big ante. Maybe I was just straddled even. I don't know. Whatever it was like, it wasn't too big a deal to throw. If it's losing, it's like losing a few $100, and I didn't want to fold. I don't like fold.
My thought at the time was you really wanted to bluff Phil. But the result of the hand was that Phil got out of the way, and the flop came jack high, and Laz went barrel, barrel, barrel. So you called it down and won a huge pot.
I think he bet pretty small.
He did bet small on the river. That's true. It was a fun game. It was a fun game. The first day we played shockingly few pots, shockingly few reasonable pots. Like, everything was super small. It was a little strange.
Like, tighter, more studied lineup, so you just don't get as good of action. Like, I couldn't do stuff like calling the jack 5, but it would be torching a lot of money. So one thing I try to do is, I'll always kind of try to push it in games, and so I'll play all the hands I think I can get away with. But obviously, if you're playing a table with a bunch of people who have studied a lot lately and are playing really like tight aggressive, you can't get away with that much. And a lot of the other lineups I played, whether the jack 5 is winning or not, it's like not that bad. So I just go for those sometimes.
I also think the deep stacks can slow down the action a little bit. Like, when you start 250 big blinds deep, I think it can it can slow things.
Well, I think that depends. If you're playing people who re-raise a lot pre-flop and push people off pots with like uh, bigger size raises and stuff. But if people are making their raises small and you're deep stacked, like you can just get in there and gamble with them, especially if you think you can stack them if you like flop 2 pair or something.
Yeah, I was real disappointed in your deuce 7 bluff against me. It was clever to call with the deuce 7 pre against my under the gun, and then it was a tight fold always, and then as it went down, it was a exceptionally tight, exceptionally bad fold, and then to just add the insult where I had to pay you for bluffing with the deuce 7 was just super painful.
So in short deck, when we would play Jack 6 or 6-7, sometimes even both, and you get them a bunch more often, so you're supposed to call a decent amount of the time. Like it's harder to push people off hands pre-flop. You need to raise a lot bigger, and so you still sometimes shove them, sometimes re-raise them pre-flop, but you call them a lot of the time. And I think I just wasn't really paying attention. It was like, oh, okay, call. I hadn't really thought through, like, what if I have deuce 7 this hand? Am I going to re-raise Brandon? And I just was like, all right, I don't want to think about it for too long. Because that's the worst, is when you're playing like deuce 7 or jack 6 or something. I've had this a few times where I'll just get a read pre-flop that I'm like, oh, I think this dude's 15% to have deuce 7. And you can just torch them, because sometimes that'll go up to, like, by the river, you think it's 25%. You don't need much of a hand to be calling them. And so I always try to not fish it and give away those reads. Like, usually I don't think there's live reads where you can that often pick out someone's exact hand, except when you're playing those bounty games. Then I think there's times, where, and so I try to not do that myself. I don't want to give it away where you're looking at me like, does this guy have deuce 7? Let me look him up,
Yeah, I had no idea where well, obviously I had the complete opposite read. I thought that you were quite strong and that the board developed in a nice way. Do you remember when we first met? Because it's so funny. I think there aren't that many people where you remember distinctly where you first met a person, but I remember quite clearly when and where I first met you.
I don't remember.
Okay, you had on a gold chain, like a chain. And you wore and now you
I think silver maybe
and hair gel, and otherwise you looked like basically the same.
Was it in Boston?
No, you were 18 and it was at the PCA in the Bahamas, and you were like, "Hey, I'm Dur."
We had played online a bit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Because we hung out in Boston some after, because you were teaching there when I was supposed to be in school and then failing out.
Yeah.
But I didn't remember that one. PCA, so it's probably the same time I met like Dave Benefield. That's when I started meeting the first people I knew in poker.
Yeah. Well, I remember distinctly you were 18.
Yeah, that was, I think, the second. I had went to Vic in London for whatever, EPT something, I think it was. I think that was the first tournament I ever went to. And then the second one was PCA. But live poker. I still remember I think it was that trip, and I was watching a hand. I might butcher this hand, but I'm pretty sure it was JRB. He was playing 25-50, and I forget the action, but it was like a single raised pot, and on the end I think he called maybe 20 something thousand. It was like a 70K pot, and he had ace jack on a jack high board. And I was just like, what is this idiot doing? Wow, he's so bad. And then he won the pot. And I was like, what? And I was coming from online where this just like never happened. And then I was like, shit, maybe I should learn about this live poker thing. But
So you had from early stages a gaming background, not like a super serious gaming background, but you were interested in games.
yeah, I like sports. I like video games. I like competitive stuff.
There are stories that have been told before you were good at video games, like not a competitive gamer, but you were good at video games.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I'd say that. No, I was like maybe a little better than average, but not like, yeah, I don't know, not too good.
And when it came to poker, it's fair to say that you educated the best of your generation in the sense that in the way that ideas flow, the direction of the flow for, like, say, the big winners in online poker, like 2005 to 2007 and beyond, the direction of the flow more often than not was Tom to Benefield or Tom to Galfond than the other way. Is that a fair generalization, or?
I don't know. I don't know that I'd say that. I mean, me and Phil Galfond and Z and Hack Dang, we were playing the highest stakes games all the time, and we would have it where basically if I played a hand versus Galfond, I could ask one of the Dangs, or Galfond could ask one of them. We would never ask each other for hands against each other because, there's this, or I shouldn't say never. Maybe if one dude had lost a fortune that day and one guy won a lot, you would give him like honest advice. But there's this thing I've seen a lot in poker, especially in the live games, where people will be like pretend to be friends and then give advice that's bad. And whether they know it's bad or they don't care to think about it or whatever it is, they don't control for that. And I don't know. I think that can cause all kinds of issues because in poker, like adjusting, catching your mistakes is so important. And so you need a way of getting feedback that's that you trust, so that you can catch your mistakes if you're making them, But yeah, so I don't know if I'd say those three guys I think I learned a lot from. And there's other people I would learn some from here and there, but those three I think they learned a lot from me and I learned a lot from them.
In a way, though, you're the more out of the box thinker in that group, but in all groups, like in the poker world in general, you were more innovative in the flexibility of your approach.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say if you came up with a new game, especially me and Galfond probably would have been a little better than the Dangs day one at it. And generally, maybe I would have, sometimes Galfond would be better than me, but maybe I would be slightly better at your average new game. But usually the learning was the important part. Like how good you are at a new game day one isn't that important. It was how fast you learn and pick up from other people. And now there's a lot of resources, Galfond being one of them that went in just decided to teach everyone poker. But there's a lot of resources out there for people to learn. And back then there weren't it wasn't easy to actually get high level poker education. So yeah, I don't know. I would say I was one of the first guys to go from online to live, and obviously I knew I had played more hands in the last year than those guys, and there were certain strategic things I knew better or concepts I knew better, but I tried to learn from a lot of the people playing live stuff that they knew that I didn't or whatever, whether it be live tells or just stuff that happened where, you're grumpy because you didn't get a hand for an hour, so you bluff a little more often and you don't realize it because you're not sitting at home a little more comfortable playing a few tables at once kind of thing. I don't know. I would say that was, as far as I know, that was the impact I had. That was the biggest, I think, was going from online to live and then playing those shows and stuff.
Now, in that transition, who would you say you learned the most from?
I mean, like, it's not like anyone willingly gave me advice. Probably Ivy, but he didn't give me advice. I was just like, oh shit, this dude's smart. And so I would try to like pick up the stuff he did. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think there were a lot of people, but you know, I would hear the stories of a lot of the like high stakes regulars laughing at what some online people have done, and I'd be like, oh, I don't want to do those things. Like, let's try to not repeat those mistakes. Let's try to not do them as often, kind of thing.
So now you play very little online poker, and your interest is primarily live and especially short deck, right?
That was definitely true before the pandemic. Who knows what's going to happen going forward? But yeah, there were pretty big short deck games going on for a while there.
Are you optimistic about online poker in the US? A lot of people are concerned that technology has advanced to a point where online poker is troubled because of the power of the AI bots and the difficulty of detecting them and real-time assistance and all of these sorts of things. Maybe online poker existed in a sweet spot of time where you had the internet working well, but you didn't have all of this stuff. And some people think it's hard now. Do you think there's a good future for online poker?
So I think those concerns are valid. I still think there's an opportunity if it's basically if the sites police it aggressively. And I think it's still dangerous and they won't get it right and they'll mess up. But I mean, man, people in the US love poker and they haven't had an easy way to play since it was Black Friday 2011, right?
Yeah.
And the whole market's been warped. You know, if you looked at the stats from Full Tilt, and I think stars were similar, that it was roughly half Americans till like the year before Black Friday. And then I think it was slightly more rest of the world. And basically, I don't know, I've never done tons of research into this, but I would guess that the pros were reasonably evenly distributed. And so that means Black Friday happened and you effectively shut off, 40, 45% of the recreational players. But you only shut off maybe 10% of the pros? Because a lot of those pros moved to Canada, moved to Mexico, still play some, try to figure out a way to VPN in, that kind of stuff. Like, basically the game economy just got very messed up. And at the same time, the sites were not at their flushest or happiest. And so, Rake started changing all this. There wasn't the competitive stars and Full Tilt back and forth marketing aggressively. You kind of only had stars as the only game in town. And I think the whole game economy just got quite warped. So I definitely think there's a large opportunity coming with the US opening up, but I do think those concerns are valid. And so it's going to be, I'm not sure which one will win out. And I think the sites will be able to sway that a bit. Who knows how much or for how long, but if they police it well, I could see, there being a somewhat of a second golden age, maybe not quite as much as the first, but.
Yeah. Well, as you say, the appetite is clearly there. So I could easily see a world where online poker comes back. It's legal in more states than just Jersey and Nevada, and tournaments kind of take center stage because people realize that cash games do have these concerns with computer assistance and so forth. So tournaments take center stage. And then I honestly think that in tournaments, people don't care if they're if they're up against competition that plays perfectly because of computer assistance or whatever. Like, I think as long as it's 10%, not 70% of the competition, I think that people, whatever, they're just enjoying online poker, they'll be relatively okay with it. And tournaments could blossom because you could get big headline numbers for first place. Like, you could have, just like in daily fantasy, you have last weekend, like 3 tournaments had $1 million for first on one day. You could have that for poker, where you have whatever, 500K for first every Sunday. And you could easily see a boom.
I think that's a simplified take that could pan out. And I can only share so much here, but I'm going to try to think and share what I can. If the sites don't fish it, I think there's a better option. And I think there's a lot of things you can do to disadvantage the bots and advantage the humans. And those things aren't easy, and you're going to make mistakes. But that's something that hasn't been focused on for the last 7 or 8 years, most places. And if I'll give you the example of Triton because it's one I'm affiliated with and I know. If you try to do stuff to level the playing field, you don't need to get it perfect. You don't need to get it great. You just make it more level. People like to play poker. And especially with all of online gaming opening up in the US, which I think is very likely, poker is a great way to get people to come to your gaming site. So I think if it's handled aggressively and smart, where it's like, here's this threat, it's a big threat, here's what we're trying to do, we're going to change it up all the time, and we're going to try to help out the humans to level the playing field, then I think you could have a pretty big poker boom coming. But that's more work for random executives as opposed to saying, oh, it's not a problem, give me my paycheck. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. I don't know. I'm hopeful, but we'll see.
In the immediate future, I find it interesting that World Series of Poker, they announced that the main event is going to be online this year. They are adding $1 million to the prize pool, which is a very welcome development. We haven't.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, there've been some good tournaments recently. Like Carey has added to the prize pool in some recent tournaments. But this is a very welcome development to have World Series of Poker adding $1 million. So they announced this tournament, and then all of a sudden it was crickets. It was the most bizarre thing. They haven't promoted it at all. And the only thing I can guess is that because the COVID cases started to accelerate, and this is a part online, part live event where the final table is live, maybe they thought that from a PR perspective, it looked a little funny. So they decided to back off on promoting it. That's the only thing I can guess, because it's weird to add $1 million and then not promote it in any way.
Yeah, I don't know. I hadn't heard about that. So maybe you could just send me it and I'll check it out after. But I don't know.
Yeah, like the tournament is next weekend. So yeah, the main event is next weekend. That's what I'm saying. Like, you haven't heard of it. It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. The tournament is Sunday, next weekend, the December 13th. And you have to be in Jersey or Vegas or Nevada. And it's otherwise normal, like similar structure, 10,000 freeze out.
That's so weird. Yeah, that's very weird.
Yeah. So mark that on your calendar. You're playing the main event.
That's very weird. All right. Yeah, I didn't realize it was. I thought this was something like months in the future. So I didn't realize it was a week away. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah. And okay, half of it is in Europe. So they they play in 2 days. And then the other half is in the US and we play on December 13th. Maybe I'll play. I haven't decided yet, but then they join up at the end of December and play on ESPN to a winner. I'm doing their promo for them since they dropped the ball. Okay, so poker in Asia. We're not going to go like deep into it, but I do have some questions. Explain to me, okay, at the table, I've seen this before. The idea that someone wins a pot and then gives the loser of the pot like a little token, like a little rebate. That's the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. You're going to have to explain to me how in the culture the rebate develops. And have you ever seen it in an American game? Have you ever seen a rebate?
There's only like one group I know of that generally does that, and I can't really.
Okay.
I can't really get into that.
Yeah.
But most of the games don't have that.
Part of the culture, like it's almost like insulting. It's like here's a little token.
I can't really get into that one. Sorry, that one I gotta skip.
Oh, the rebate, the culture around the rebate.
Yeah, that one I gotta skip.
Okay. So for if you're playing in the game as an outsider, you just like,
is it like
most of the games don't have that.
Okay.
You must have seen. I'm surprised you actually even saw it. You must have saw. Yeah, I don't know. I can't get into that one too much.
I like that. So what are the biggest differences? Let's just say high stakes poker in Macau back when Macau was booming, and high stakes in Vegas. What were the biggest cultural differences in the game? I would say.
So in Vegas, if you look around, a lot of people are having a drink trying to enjoy themselves as they're gambling. And in Macau, I don't know what it was last year, but often the yearly revenue is 4 or 5. At peak, I think it was 7 times Vegas. There was a year they made like 45 billion. Vegas made 6 or something like this. Maybe 48. I don't know, something. The people in Vegas, a lot of them are trying to relax and have fun and have an idea at least that they're not favorites, or don't really care if they're not favorites or something like that. And in Macau, you have a lot of people studying the baccarat board and drinking tea, and they're trying to focus and figure out if player or banker is coming next. So there's just, it's a different culture because of that. And you have that where even the businessmen that have, lost 40 of their last 50 plays, they're still like trying to win. I don't know how to explain it because their play doesn't necessarily reflect that they're trying to win, but it's like a different element of you don't have just people spewing around the same. Like, I don't know how to explain it. You'll have sometimes people want to gamble because they think they're going to win that hand, or I don't know. I mean,
it's interesting to go to the horse track, one of the 2 horse tracks in Hong Kong, and it's a similar difference to American culture, where in American culture, these are the ultimate drinking places, like a horse track, and in Hong Kong, it's like people are sitting in the SATs. It's a very, very studied environment, and there's very little drinking. It's very fun to watch. And the poker, long hours, maybe part of the cultural difference. I don't know.
Like if a Chinese businessman walks up to a table, they can be scared away by pros very easily. They can be scared away by all of that very easily. But once they sit, then there's an element of competition that's, I don't know, it's a bit different. Like I'll see games in the West where a businessman walks up, sits down for an hour, and then is like, this is boring, you guys aren't playing enough hands, and leaves. And in Asia, especially if the guy's losing, that just doesn't really happen very often.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's just some differences. I don't know. I haven't thought that one through that much, so I don't know how to explain it too well. But
So you've spent a huge amount of time in the past 6 years in Hong Kong, and your quarantine life was in Hong Kong, but now you're in Vegas. Is that right?
no, I'm in London actually. I was in Vegas. I came here like a few weeks ago, and I'm going back to Vegas in a minute.
It looks like a small hotel room by your standards. It's
No, I'm in an apartment.
okay. I thought that was a funny story back in the day when you would play a lot of online poker and you would get the nicest hotel room on the thinking that it improved your win rate by a little bit. It turned out
Where was that?
in London.
London, the rooms were so small. That's why. I
Yeah.
would hate it when I was like cramped. If you're playing a long online poker session, I mean, I don't need a huge room. Like this is a small little apartment. I don't know, maybe 1,500 square feet or something. Probably not even that. I don't know. But you just need enough to be able to walk around for a minute. Like when you sit out for a break for 2 minutes, you don't want a little one bedroom place if you're playing online a lot. You know, because often you can only sit out 5 minutes, 10 minutes back in the day. So you want to be able to like take a break, walk around for a second, clear your head, and not feel cramped in your little hotel room. Especially because if you're doing that, usually it means you're losing and grumpy and yeah.
Now you haven't had COVID yet, in part because you were in Hong Kong and Hong Kong was pretty clean while you were there, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I have. I've never tested positive. I don't think I had it. When I was in Hong Kong, the cases were, I mean, there were a few days that were triple digits, but most of the time the cases were pretty low. And so even if there were 100 cases a day, that's roughly the same per capita as if there were 5,000 a day in the US. Meaning you know, at least for me, I didn't have older relatives there or anything. Like my daily life wasn't massively altered other than complying with their restrictions and stuff, you know. But it's a little different when, you know, the US now has, I think it's like 175K in the last few days.
Yeah.
So it's kind of brutal. I mean, it's, you know, I'm especially nervous about giving it to more vulnerable people. If I get it, I think I'm young and healthy enough. It shouldn't be too bad, but I'd still rather not get it. You know, I'd prefer to get a vaccine and dodge it. And it's just pretty sad. You know, there's been a lot of hardship.
Yeah.
So you're in London for a bit. You might go back to Vegas shortly. You might or might not be there next weekend for the main event.
Yeah, I didn't know the main event thing. So I'm going to be leaving here any day now. And I'm actually trying to figure out, because I heard that they're shipping 200 million vaccines. So meaning 100 million each, Pfizer and Moderna. So I need to research it and see if that's true. But I heard they were shipping 100 million each by the end of December. And so if that's true, I think a lot of people want to wait on the vaccine. So I'm guessing there will be extras. It'd be sweet to have one and be able to go about normal life again. So
yeah, that would be very, very good. I think the time frame will be a little slower, but we'll have to see.
Why do you say that?
Distribution, it can take, I think it might take a couple months, but we'll see.
I thought they had said 100 million by the end of December and then 1 billion next year was my understanding. But I don't know. I haven't researched it a ton myself. I've, you know, talked to a few doctor friends and.
Well, I guess we shouldn't get it in the last month. It seems like you play it tight for a month or two, and it seems sensible.
Yeah, I mean, if there was going to be a few years till a vaccine, then I guess if you're not in a high risk group, maybe you just need to accept, you know, a reasonable amount of risk. But it's way different if there's a vaccine coming in a month.
So in London, you have business interests in the sports analytics space. Like you're involved in companies that do like back office type stuff for for the legal gambling outfits. We're waiting on you to make the We're waiting on you to make the transformation to Elon Musk status. That's the poker world is ready for you to figure out alternative energy or do some Elon Musk like activities. But you're not doing that now. You're a business mogul within the gambling space. Is that correct?
Says who?
Right now, you're not solving the world's problems a la Elon Musk. Most of your business
gambling stuff for now. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. Mogul, I think, implies a lot more success than I've had so far.
Yeah. Well, it's a growth industry, right? So
that's true. That's true.
You should have actually. This is a true story. This is a crazy story. So it's almost like we don't realize how smart our poker friends are. They give you so many good ideas, and if you think back to it, like so many of these things you should have taken. Like I'm sure you've given me 100 great ideas that I haven't taken up. But there were a couple things that really stand out in my mind in terms of missed opportunities. One was Brian Micon, who used to run the super entertaining site like Never Win Poker back in the day when like 2+2 was at its heyday. Micon, back in 2011 or 2012, I think it was 2011 though. It was like Bitcoin was trading at $4, and he was just all over me, passionate about it. And he doesn't get that way very often. And he's a really smart guy. And the problem was that he wasn't like trying to get me involved in piecemeal. He wanted me to help him buy this site Seals with Clubs. And in the process, buy like $90,000 worth of Bitcoin. I'm like, Micon, I can't do that. I don't know anything about this. It's illegal to run an online poker site. I can't do that. I can't help you do that. But he's like, okay, if you don't do the poker site, at least buy a lot of Bitcoin at $3. I guarantee you'll be happy. And it was sort of like on my to-do list, like buy Bitcoin. And I never did it. I should have listened to Micon. Sorry, Micon. We could have had some fun together. And then also a similar story around about a year before that. So in 2010, I was commentating the show Doubles Poker, the Full Tilt show. And I would stay with Chris Sparks and these guys that had a really fun Hollywood Hills house. I would stay in a spare room that they had when I would commentate the series, and then I would go home or whatever. And so one of the guys in the house was this guy, Seth. And he would go on about Bitcoin, and I never kind of got involved. I'm like, yeah, that's great, whatever. Anyway, he's a legend on the internet now because you can go to these old forums where at the time that I was staying at his house, he was trading like PokerStars money for Bitcoin when Bitcoin was 80 cents.
Oh, this
and
is
even
the guy
less.
you were
Yeah.
talking about, that he would just like invest all of his poker winnings in Bitcoin.
Yeah. And then he was so passionate about Bitcoin that he just kept it all. Didn't matter, like 5,000, 8,000, 15,000. He just kept it all. So that's one category of regrets, the Bitcoin regrets. The other one was, again, right around 2000. I remember summer 2012. Haral Bob says, let's go to lunch at Palm's place. So we go to lunch. He says, look, in the the legal gambling bill, the sports bill, they have a carve out for fantasy sports. He said, I want to back you to create the biggest fantasy sports company to do legal fantasy sports in the US. And I said, well, I'm kind of busy at the moment, but it sounds good. It's interesting. Let's keep up the conversation. Again, put it on the to-do list, like start fantasy sports company backed by Haral Bob. and I should have done that one. That would have been that would have been a smart idea in 2012. But yeah, the poker people, they're very early and smart in a lot of ways. And it's like back in the 2+2 forum days, it was like an early Reddit, right? They would have topics all over the map, and you'd learn quite a bit browsing that site.
I think there's poker teaches people how to think about things through a lot of different lenses. Especially, maybe not so much if you're just learning what someone else does in already quite solved space, but more if you're trying to jump into new games and stuff and trying to analyze what to do, how to do it, or like changing game structure. And so I think it can select for people who sometimes can analyze stuff pretty well. I think Susquehanna has a bunch of their traders play poker, something like that, right?
Yeah, at the top 4, they have a lot of poker tables, and a big part of their training is poker. And then, of course, like Bill Chin and Jared Ankenman were working there at the time that they were writing the mathematics of poker. So they've done like a lot of poker research projects while they were working there. And now I'm sure they're deep in sports analytics and sports market making, and they have an operation in Ireland doing some sports market making. I don't know very much about what they're doing, but I assume that they're pretty deep in it and good at it. Yeah, I gave a speech there one time at Susquehanna, and Jared guest lectured in my class one time with Matt Hardolenko. You guest lectured once, game theory.
I remember him, Haas TVF, right? Matt Hardolenko.
Yeah, he's a professor
now.
Oh shit, where?
I think in Boston, but I need to check that and check on Twitter. Yeah, he kind of retired at the top. I'm pretty sure he was still doing a lot of winning at the time that he retired. He was one of the earliest guys with a fully GTO approach to limit hold'em, with it, or with the most disciplined kind of game theoretic approach, and he was a big winner back in the day, and I kind of think he retired on top in the sense that he never had a sustained downswing.
Yeah, I think he won a lot. I don't know the whole story. But.
So Asia, you've done a lot of travel. A lot of your life has been centered in Asia recently. What are your favorite aspects of moving about that part of the world?
Usually I'm only there for a month or two, sometimes even a few weeks. But I just happened to be there when the virus hit. So, I was planning to come back and then looking like, oh, there's a ton of cases and the US is more shut down, and Hong Kong, you can wake surf every day. One seems better. So,
okay, in poker, you have your A game, and then you have deviations from your A game, right?
Sure.
No, I'm not talking about you. I'm not talking about you specifically. I'm talking about every poker player, every decision maker, whether it's financial markets or sports analytics or poker. But poker, it seems to be especially important. So
I see it a lot clearer.
Yeah. So you
see mistakes as clear or as quick in other areas.
you are traveling all around the world, live a lot of times in hotels, random places, not all the time, but it's a pretty scattered life. It's hard to keep a solid mental state. What secrets have you discovered over time for minimal deviations for your A game? And I want to give some framework for people. People think of you as like way crazier than you actually are. You're actually one of the most disciplined guys around. Like, I'll just give one stat. I remember once we talked about the concept of like busting an online account, whether it's a poker account or whatever. I remember once that you told me that until quite late in your poker career, you could count the times that you had busted a single poker account on one hand, which is very unusual in the high stakes account. But I've seen it from you many times. I've seen it where you.
I don't think that's true. Because I would bust accounts all the time where like I didn't have much money on UB, and when they had the higher stakes games, and so I would play my 5, 10, 10, 20 on stars or full tilt and try to spin it up at 25-50 on UB.
Maybe it was in the late career that it happened.
Maybe I meant like online roll overall.
Pre Isildur insanity. That it happened infrequently.
I meant like online roll overall, because before I started playing live, I didn't have that happen. You know, I would bust accounts all the time, but not like overall online.
So, okay, the big question: what secrets have you learned over time to maintaining mental state, to having discipline, staying close to your A game?
I don't know that there's secrets. And I think you're not going to maintain it. You just want to catch it when it slips.
When it slips, you try to quit, or what do you do?
Walk, have a coffee, meditate, take a shower, whatever the hell works for you, but just try to catch it. Everyone's going to have times where their decision-making, their mental state slips. Different things are going to work better for different people, but trying to catch that, acknowledge it, and then address it is real important. And in some industries, it'll show faster and cost you sooner. And poker is one of those.
So it's mostly just self-awareness to see when you're not playing your A game, and you know.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, I'm not playing my A game when I've been up 40 hours, and I'll keep playing those games. If I'm playing my D game and it's better than the other guy's C game, that's okay. Or if I'm playing, my D game and he doesn't know what planet he's on, that's okay. So I think it's, some self-awareness and some like situational awareness. And sometimes I've been better at that, sometimes worse, but generally I think I've done pretty well at that.
Yeah.
So your stamina for games, you played a lot of long sessions. You feel your stamina is quite good. In high stakes poker, it was a grinding schedule all day, every day, and you seem to have no trouble.
I don't know. The last few years, I don't feel as sharp after 20, 30 hours as I used to. But I also haven't played too many long sessions, so that's probably part of it. That I'm more like out of practice, because I used to have those much more regularly. So then you get more used to, where your head's at, what some tricks are, that kind of stuff. But I mean, I haven't played live poker in many months other than high stakes poker. So
yeah,
42 next week. It's I'm getting old. Yeah, getting old. I enjoy the all day, every day, like high stakes poker type filming. And tournaments I enjoy as well, but when the tournaments are a series, that can get a little trying, can get tiring. So are there any routines? Are there any routines that you try to keep up to stay sharp? Like workout, nutrition, whatever?
Yeah, but I'll fail at keeping them up all the time. So like when you do, sure, you feel better and, feel sharper. I think circling back to that stuff is, at least for me, that's what's important, is like if I, these last few weeks I've been eating like shit, but I got to make sure I sit down and eat healthy for a few weeks kind of thing. Or when I'm, if I'm the same with being lazy, not going to the gym for a bit, same kind of thing. But it depends where you're at. Obviously it's going to sting you less if you're not playing as much or not doing as difficult stuff. The higher level of competition you're at, the sharper you got to be.
So you kind of trust your body to recover from lifestyle deficiencies if you play it tight over short periods and work out, eat well, that kind of thing.
Well, I mean, I haven't eaten well for 2 or 3 weeks. I think I'm guessing I'll be able to bounce back from that. I hope. If I did it for years, sure, maybe there's going to be a bunch of issues, but I don't know.
So having survived in poker, having thrived for over a long period of time, what are the biggest pitfalls that you've seen? Like, let's just say among your contemporaries who were talented at poker, also coming through at a young age, had times where the environment was favorable. Among your contemporaries, what are big pitfalls that you witnessed?
I would say the first one that comes to mind is just ego. That whenever you're doing something like poker, decision making like that, your ego is gonna get you, and it's gonna sting you, and it's gonna cost you, and you want to try to catch it when that happens, as opposed to letting it go on too long. So that happens all the time, where someone thinks, I've had it plenty of times myself, that I think I'm not doing something wrong, or I've got a good strategy or whatever, and someone figures out, an improvement on whatever you're doing, or figures out issues with what you're doing. And I think catching that stuff's important. But I don't know. Whatever. That's a lot of poker talk. Let's talk about the election or some shit.
Yeah. What's the 2021
before you started the pod, right? So I thought that was a funny one. Just there were so many people so sure on both sides when it was reasonably close. Obviously, Biden did win, but the Democrats still lost seats in the House. I don't know. Yeah, it was, from a gambling standpoint, I found it funny. Remember on High Stakes we were talking about how much money was bet on the election and stuff like that?
Yeah, and we were probably close to right on our estimates.
What was our estimate? I don't remember.
I think around 10 billion. No, I think it was bigger. I think the estimate that we ultimately came to was 15 billion, which I think is probably about right.
It had to be more than that bet. Betfair had $1 billion alone.
Yeah.
I think it had to be way more than that bet. I think.
Yeah. Yeah, Betfair is volume though, and people can trade in and out of positions on both sides. I think 15 billion is a sharp estimate. But it's a very large amount, and it's very interesting that it hasn't been settled, that market. So people will see, I guess when every state certifies, that hasn't happened yet, right? So when that happens,
Betfair, it's at Electoral College, I think.
Okay.
Which is in 10 days or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, the price is, I had looked at it today, it was 30-1 for Trump or something, maybe a little more, even 34 or something. So it's getting close to them.
Yeah. It has been totally bizarre. That election night was very, very strange. Watching in LA.
Yeah, I thought we were going to be able to do a pod that day and talk about, what we thought the chances were and stuff like that. Instead, I was scrambling the whole day. I got some Biden at 4-1 on election day. So.
Yeah, I wasn't betting. I was just watching Twitter, and it was fun to watch the TV and watch Twitter and just follow the random conversations. And I was watching some live streams, like Chamath had a live stream going. I was watching that.
How was it?
It was fun. Yeah, they had like 6 people on.
It's
Does
very
he do that a lot, live stream?
No, their podcast is great. It's called the All In Podcast, and the live stream, I think that's the only one they've done during the election.
Gotcha.
But yeah, what's your outlook? Let's say for the economy or markets. Do you follow those? Like I enjoy. It's funny. Like Sauce loves talking about markets. So in our podcast, we're chatting about markets a good bit, and Strasser obviously.
Well, what's your take? You probably have a better take than me on what the outlook is. Biden's team, how it's likely to be for markets.
I don't have super strong opinions. I think that we're on this course that is long-term disastrous, but we're committed to it. We're committed to printing a lot of money to prop up stuff that rich people own. So we're going to play that game until it collapses on itself. Seems like a very unwise thing to do, but that's the policy of the moment.
I don't see it changing either. I mean, it should change, but I don't. At least I believe it should change, but the reality is, I don't think it's going to change.
Yeah, what a stupid system, though. What a dumb system. What a dumb system where we have these crises every few years, and then we just print a bunch of money and give it to rich people, and then like pretend that it's all okay because the S&P makes good prints, and it's like it's the dumbest system of all times. Like the politics of it deserves to fail, but that's what we're doing. So I don't know. I guess my outlook is that we'll continue to do that until it breaks.
When do you think I think you could go a bit more than 100% GDP without too huge of problems, right? Like Japan went to 230, but they have a lot of, or 250 or whatever. I don't know what it's at now, but I think 230 or 250. But a lot of their debt is owned domestically. Culturally, it's like a little different, but still, most of America's is owned domestically. Also, not quite as much as Japan's, but I think we can go past 100% before the like.
That's not the constraint as I see it. The constraint as I see it is political first and foremost. That it becomes increasingly apparent to everyone that this is the strategy. Print money, support assets that rich people own, and as you're printing money, the lower 75% of the income distribution, their incomes don't go up, but the prices go up. And eventually this leads to political disaster. So I think that's constraint number one. And constraint number two is inflation that will come at some point, in particular, just like inflation and just everyday consumer prices. And
the thing is, inflation technology is keeping the consumer inflation down a lot, because when you just look at how many technological advances have happened in the last decade or two, understandably, it's easier to get goods to people. And I think that, I don't know if you want to call it deflation, but whatever, the price reduction from technology, I think, is outweighing inflation currently. And that's why the CPI and stuff isn't really going up much. But if you look at, assets rich people own, inflation, there's a bunch of inflation.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that technology is fully deflationary. The Amazon effect is very deflationary, but over time, the parts of the economy that are strongly inflationary will just become a bigger and bigger part of things, like healthcare. The costs inflate year by year. That becomes a bigger share of things. Education, childcare, services generally, like those things where productivity gains are slight and technology doesn't come into play, those will just become more important. And we're so willing to push the envelope in terms of extreme deficit spending and extreme money printing that, to me, it's just, we're on a path where we're going to do it to a more extreme degree year by year, and we're just going to test it until it breaks. So it is what it is.
How do you see it breaking, though? You see it breaking politically?
Yeah, most likely, just because well, I think there's a lot of willful blindness on the part of wealthy people that own the assets, and they like don't really understand what's going on. So they don't see the injustice in it. And so because they don't see anything wrong, and a lot of the policymakers either don't see anything wrong or pretend that it's the best path for them, whatever. We're just going to do it until it breaks. And we are so committed to, like, basically boomer retirement accounts, to more than boomer retirement accounts, like pension well-being and the whole system of financial assets / retirement saving. Like we're so committed to the optics of that, like what the actual nominal values are.
There's an optics thing at play there for sure.
And the underlying weakness is real, because we've always known that that demographically, when the first of the boomers started to retire around the middle of the last decade, like that would be a wave of entitlement spending, and that's what's in the backdrop of everything, right? Also, like for state and local governments, that stuff, state and local pensions, is in the background. So you're basically walking uphill because of ongoing entitlement expenses. So I think the outlook is pretty bleak. But in terms of what a person should do to protect themselves, I think, look, people are doing it now. They're like getting in assets that will do well in the event of inflation, like Bitcoin and gold and that kind of thing. So people are doing like what they can do, I guess, to protect themselves, and they pile in stocks more than I would, just because I guess that also can serve as a haven during inflation.
Yeah, I mean, stocks are still going to do reasonably or whatever, right? If you have income coming in, then your income is going to go up as inflation goes up.
Yeah.
So
a lot of that is priced in assets currently, right? Like a lot of the way the market prices things now is for what the world will look like 5 to 10 years from now. A lot of very valuable companies like the DraftKings of the world and a lot of our big tech companies, they lose a lot of money, but we look well forward.
Well, the S&P PE is pretty high compared to historic numbers, right? I had checked it a little bit ago. I think it was getting up there.
Yeah, depending on your method, you could argue that it's the highest ever.
Really?
Depending on your method.
What method would that be?
So it gets a little tricky because you have the concept of like cyclically adjusted earnings,
all right,
where you try to normalize earnings across an earnings cycle, and it would be according to those ratios that current valuations are at the highest level ever.
What's an earnings cycle? 1 year, you mean?
Well, it's a little bit tough because like we haven't had a cyclical downturn since we came out of the 08-09 financial crisis. So you hit the depths really quickly and hard in 09, and then you slowly came out of it. And there was no cyclical downturn pre-COVID. So like the concept of the cyclically adjusted earnings has become problematic. But yeah, it would be a simple way to think of it is valuations are very high today because at pretty peak cycle earnings, if you're taking pre-COVID earnings and looking at today's prices, the ratio is high, even though that you're at top of cycle earnings.
All
right. The poker world, who knows? Maybe they're smart with being still in Bitcoin at these crazy high prices, but it seems to me like metals are a better play. Who knows though? Who knows?
You've loved gold for like 10 years.
Oh yeah, I love gold. Yeah, gold's the best. Of course. Just have to restrain myself from shorting some of the most overvalued stocks. That does not go well at all. Strasser, you have to listen to the pod. Strasser tells a great story about the squeeze in potash, the pot stock. No, I'm sorry. Potash is the agriculture. Which one? Tilray. The squeeze in Tilray. So Tilray, for some reason, all poker players decided to short it around the same time. And then like over the next 2 weeks, there was this historic short squeeze where it went straight up. And he knows some, I don't think he drops names on the pod, but there were some poker players that just got blasted in this squeeze. It was one of the most overvalued companies of all times at 150. And in the squeeze, it hit a peak of like 295.
Okay.
And $100 of that happened in one day. So, and poker players had just decided to go all in on this short, and they got smashed. It'd be funny to get that story over drinks. So you see it as a golden time. I won't keep you for too much longer. 5 minutes. You see it as a golden time for the legal gambling space, sports, poker, the whole thing.
I see it as a golden time for the legal gambling space. Poker could be a big part of that, but I don't think that part is as clear. You know, sports, the next few years, they're going to do well in the U.S. It's pretty unlikely that doesn't play out. There's different scenarios where it could be bigger or smaller. Poker, I think a lot depends on how aggressive the operators are about trying to level the playing field. And there's not going to be one answer. So anyone who tells you, here's our fix, they're just bullshitting you. And basically someone who says, here's the 10 things we're trying to do, some of these are going to work, some won't, and then we'll try to come up with a bunch of new shit. That's what you want. And hopefully that'll happen, but we'll see. You know, if that happens, I think there could be a really good spot for poker the next few years, but still undecided. So
let me ask you a big picture question about the legal sports space. So in poker, like you have the shark to fish ratio, right? And this is always moving around, and it does at different points in time become very like sharky, very predatory with a high concentration of good players. And having watched this evolve over poker, I feel like we've learned something for other gambling ecosystems like fantasy sports and sports gambling. And the one thing I see missing in commentary about sports gambling, like in, say, analyst reports about, let's say DraftKings, which is the market leader now. The one thing I see missing is that the legal gambling space does well as long as there are a lot of fish, as long as their customers are fishy, don't care about taking bad lines or losing on the regular, right? But there's another way of looking at the world where if the consumer does gravitate to being more sophisticated, you can get a space where the legal sportsbook just has an impossible problem where they're trying to post for every sport every day all the lines pre-market, like all your over-under spreads, money lines, and they're doing this pre-market for every sport, and then they're trying to get the right prices live as well. And that problem could be truly impossible if they're up against a sophisticated clientele that's just waiting for the spots where they get the lines wrong and picking them off. Is it just assumed that sort of sharky line selector is going to be always a very small percentage of the betting population?
Well, it's not that hard of a problem to solve when you're laying minus 110 each side if you just size down. So just to give you an example, if I said to you, all right, whatever odds MGM or someone like that has, right? You can bet at any of those for $10. Like, I don't think you could win, right? If I let you, bet thousands, yeah, there's a good chance you could figure out a few areas and figure out how to win. But for $10, you're just not going to find the energy because you're going to try to go make 4% on your little $10 bet. So basically, if you look at the UK as an example, I think it was Sky Bet, that their average bet was like £6. And so basically that means they just have a ton of recreational people betting. It's not as much about having slightly sharper lines than the pros or something like that. It's just you're giving minus 110 to each side. And actually in soccer and stuff, a lot of times the spreads are even thinner. So I think it depends a lot about the structure.
But is that profitable? I'm asking as a legit question. Like, I don't know, to deal with customer service and like fees, all this sort of stuff for $6 customers. Traditionally, sports is thought to be like a whales business where what you really want is the people that...
No. If you do some market research, that's not, the UK is a massive market. It's like, I think, £2 billion a year in sports. And yeah, Sky Bet makes a fortune. I think they sold for 3 or 4 billion. I don't know if it was dollars or pounds. Some big number, maybe it was 2, but some big number. So yeah, when it becomes legal, a lot of people want to just bet $10, $20 on a game. And if you're giving minus 110 each side, those people long-term aren't going to win. Some of them might, but I'm saying the aggregate, they're not going to win. And yeah, it's different when it's Americans sometimes think of Pinnacle or something where, yes, there's a lot more somewhat sharp action. Even the losing people might be fading 1 or 2% of the rig. But a lot of the legalized places, it's very different. You just have a bunch of people who are like, oh, there's a sports game on, I want to bet $10. So.
And in the UK, I guess it's true that there hasn't been a lot of price competition as new entrants have come in, right? Like there hasn't been, they've kept that 110 or whatever the standard is for soccer relatively.
No, soccer actually a lot of times it's like, 0.98, so meaning it'd be like minus 102 each side or minus 103 each side.
Right, but in the market in general, there's not a ton of price competition. Like books aren't trying to undercut that number.
No, soccer, I think there's a lot of price competition, more than any other sport, probably because it's legal in so many places and you have, such high turnover. So I could see the U.S. gravitating towards that a bit. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how a lot of it's going to depend on how regulation's structured. For now, a lot of different states are coming out with different types of regulation. So licenses are slightly different, regulatory regimes are slightly different. And if that ends up going federal or not, I suspect New York's, I think, allowing licenses or sub-licenses or something like that. And I suspect that, New York or California or maybe Texas, if any of them would fall, obviously Texas being the least likely, that the feds, there might start being a bunch of pressure for the federal government to get involved. Not saying it would be the next day, but just people would start seeing that revenue pie being so big. So we'll see. I don't know. I wouldn't be shocked if there was some federal legislation in the next few years. But we'll see.
That would be a big change.
Yeah, I think it's reasonably likely. And I know a number of other people who should have a pretty good guess have a similar view. So,
well, this has been a lot of fun. I'm going to do a quick turnaround on this one because High Stakes Poker is dropping, I think, this weekend. So we'll try to get it out as quickly as possible.
All right. I think this might be the only podcast I've ever done.
Is that true?
I don't know. No, probably not, but I can't think of another one, so maybe it is. I don't know.
Wow,
someone will let me know in the comments or whatever. Do you have comments?
That's amazing. Yeah, never do another one. We'll keep this as the one and only. All right, this was fun. See you soon.
See you, man.